Have you ever noticed that when things get really overwhelming, you don't explode, you disappear? Welcome back to Spill the Tea, guys. I made this video in response to a couple of comments that I had gotten on a previous video. Excuse me, my allergies are killing me. Yes, but I made this video in a response to a couple of comments that were on a previous video, and it's about self-trust and how shutting down and how your nervous system wants to instantly, keep you safe. And so if you've ever noticed yourself, you know, not texting people back or shutting down or wanting to isolate yourself and go incredibly quiet and just basically segregating yourself from everyone that's around you, and before you know it, days or even weeks have gone by. What I want you to understand that is not a weakness. That's honestly your nervous system that's trying to protect you. I can honestly speak from lived experience that for a very long time I thought something was wrong with me because I would do that. When I was younger, when life got incredibly overwhelming, I didn't fight at first, I didn't argue, I would just disappear. I would isolate myself, I withdrew from people, and, I stayed in that level of isolation way longer than what I should have. Eventually, and to reflect back on my own personal struggles, my mind and my nervous system started to want to fight back. It didn't want to isolate itself anymore. It didn't want to shut down. It didn't want to avoid people. And eventually what my mind and my nervous system started to do was learn a new way of survival, and that is to fight back. And this is where I can say with certainty that I do have a small contribution to my own PTSD. But what eventually that I had to learn is that shutting down wasn't a weakness. It was just a survival response or a process. Because when your nervous system has been through enough chaos, sometimes it learns that the safest move isn't to fight, it's to just shut everything down. Or in my case, and I'm sure other people's cases, like I talked about in my own PTSD video, you do the opposite. You now become the opposite. You try to overwhelm what is overwhelming you. You may push harder, you may obviously try to stay busy to basically avoid whatever's going on. Some people will obviously run from it. Or you can be like me on the opposite spectrum where you run straight through it. And sometimes running straight through it, you leave chaos behind that was never really meant for you in the first place. So for me it looked different. I was on both sides of the spectrum. At first I would disappear, and if someone ever tried to reach out to me, I would never answer the phone, I would not respond to text, I would just emotionally and physically shut down and start pulling myself away from people. And, when I was younger, I didn't understand what was happening to me, and so I suppressed all of that. I convinced myself that the safest thing I could do was to swear everyone off and handle everything on my own. I created my own belief system, and I told myself that I didn't need anyone. But the only thing I was really doing was carrying the entire weight of life on my own shoulders because I stopped trusting people. And that's something I actually go much deeper into with my book. So if you've read A Child Called Home, you've already seen where some of those patterns started when I was a young child. And in volume 2, which I'm currently writing right now as I'm building this community right here, I talk even more about how those survival patterns followed me into early adulthood. So, if you've ever found yourself disappearing when life gets overwhelming, for one, you're not broken. It's just your nervous system just learned how to survive the safest, easiest way. But now the real question starts to become, well, how can I overcome it? And I can tell you with 1,000,000% certainty, and I will speak from my own lived experience, is I had to sit there numerous times throughout my life on how to overcome my own problems. I had to try to find that balance of how can I not shut down, but also how can I not react in a way where I destroy relationships, or I leave a wake of chaos in my own path. And I can tell you that the first step right there is actually one of the hardest ones. You have to be willing to notice when you're actually doing it. You know, you have to start noticing when you're ignoring people or shutting down. You have to start noticing when you're wanting to pull away from people. And you have to start noticing when you have that urge to isolate yourself. For me, I had to learn that at a very young age. But then as I got older into early adulthood life, again, I was on the opposite spectrum. I had to start noticing, you know, when I was getting ready to retaliate towards somebody with the same exact level, if not more, than what they were trying to bring to the table. Because that moment right there, and noticing it, is where your nervous system is trying to protect you. And so instead of trying to shame yourself, you have to first start by trying to recognize it. The second thing that I had to start understanding was that shutting down or lashing out was something that my brain learned to do to survive, to protect myself. And what I also needed to understand was just because it helped me back when I was a young kid, back when it helped me when I was a young adult, does not mean that I have to carry it with me my entire life for the rest of my life. And the third step is something that I've always had to learn the hard way. Again, as I referenced, I was always that young child that had to, you know, touch the hot stove. And so this is something that I've had to learn the hard way until I actually learned what life was trying to teach me, is that self-trust isn't, you know, pretending that you don't need anyone. You will always need a small village in your corner. The self-trust is learning how to stay present in the moment, even when your nervous system wants to disappear or retaliate. And how I had to start overcoming that was by being vulnerable enough to communicate these things. You have to be willing and vulnerable enough to start communicating what is going on internally with you. And you have to also understand, and I had to understand the hard way, that if that person isn't willing to communicate back to you, then 10 to 1, they're not meant for you. But if you can stay present enough that if someone is willing enough to listen to you and to help build with you and overcome these obstacles, then that person is worth building with. And that's what you start to notice, is that you're starting to strengthen the core around everything. You start strengthening your communication skills, you know, who you're discerning your time and energy and effort to. You start learning discernment. You start learning and having the ability to stay present in the moment. But most importantly, it's you being able to step into an uncomfortable part of your new life, of your own strength. Because naturally, in these moments, your mind is going to want to instantly revert back to old patterns that once protected you. It's going to want to instantly revert back to shutting down. It's going to want to instantly revert back to escalating that situation and overwhelming whatever it is that's overwhelming you. And by continuously practicing these things is where you find true balance. And the truth is that, you know, by overcoming these challenges in my life, it did not just come from one thing. It came from a combination of things that finally started to make a lot of sense to me. First, I started realizing that I personally was the one that was repeating the same patterns over and over and over again. And I myself was putting myself in the wrong rooms, in the wrong environments, and with the wrong people. And that's also where I had to start practicing forgiveness. And I believe I made a video on this channel as well too about forgiveness, about finding forgiveness inside yourself, and then eventually you find forgiveness for other people. Then I started learning how my nervous system actually worked, and how that trauma actually shows up in your real life. And sometimes it will show up through how you react to situations or certain things, but also it will sometimes show up through how you respond to certain things. And the final piece was learning to surround myself with people who were actually willing to communicate back. People who were willing to grow alongside me instead of avoiding everything. Because once those three things started coming together, that's when you stop living purely in survival mode and you start living more in alignment with who you actually are. And that right there is where your self-trust actually starts to begin. So I'm hoping that this message resonated with you. And make sure you guys like, share, subscribe. Again, I apologize, my allergies are killing me. If you would like to go deeper into the journey that shaped a lot of the things that we talk about here, you can also check out my book, A Child Called Home. It's actually sitting right next to me. I'll leave the link in the description where you can grab your own copy. If you want a resource that helps you reconnect with your timing and trust your own process, check out the guide that I made. It's called Found It at the Right Time. The link will be in the description down there as well too. And thanks guys, because without your engagement, without you guys watching this, I wouldn't be here. And my job and what I'm feeling compelled to do is be able to create this community where all of us can thrive and strive together. To be able to talk about the uncomfortable things, but also because I've learned a lot of things throughout my life, I also have a good strength where I can put words to what people are going through. And so for one, I want to thank all of you guys for watching these things and engaging and commenting. It keeps this channel going and growing. So I do appreciate all of you guys, and I really hope to look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Bye.